Hey friends, welcome to Bokeh, a podcast exploring the ever-blurring lines between the personal and business lives of professional photographers. This is your host, Nathan Holritz, and I'm bringing you a special episode of the Bokeh podcast today called Workflow Wednesday. During these special edition episodes, myself and my co-hosts will focus on helping you develop more efficient daily and weekly workflows around post-production, communication, task and project management, time management, file and image management, and yes, the list does go on. We're going to save you an incredible amount of time in your work week, and we promise not to be too nerdy. This podcast is brought to you by Photographer's Edit, custom image editing for the wedding and portrait photographer. Visit photographersedit.com.
Welcome to Workflow Wednesday.
Nice.
We were actually having some small talk about feeling old in our interaction with technology, which leads us really to a conversation which highlights Ren Tompkins, who's with us today. Ren, thank you so much for making time to hang out with the Bokeh podcast, Workflow Wednesday, Rich and Heather, Haley, and myself.
Hey, yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And we're I think this conversation is gonna end up being extremely wide ranging today. I was saying to Ren in an email yesterday, this is how much I'm looking forward to this episode because while we do have kind of a primary topic that we're going to get to, this is a workflow centric episode, if you will, and show. But Ren has some of the best sense of humor of any of the photographers in our Chattanooga market. She is in Chattanooga. We get to hang out usually every Thursday at our photographers brunch.
Yeah, and, I kind of think that's kind of funny that we're all in the same town, but we're
on video.
Yeah, we're all on video. We can all be in one room right now and be like, "Oh, this would be," but no, we have to be in our individual cozy little homes.
It's actually really
it's more
true.
fun that way.
And that's it's a great point though. We should think about maybe doing a live show like all in person at some point if we can figure out the technology.
Yeah, we need to do it. We need to do it at Haley's house because look at the lighting. Look at the lighting on Haley right now.
I know, it's so dramatic.
It's so flattering and awesome.
Very artistic.
I'll have to get like 5 more computers to set up.
We look like Oopa Loopas here. Look how gorgeous.
So, Haley, is that your computer screen?
Yeah. So I have a desktop that I hardly ever work on, and then I have my laptop that I focus on the most. But I just put it on. Well, all my lights are out, my blinds are shut. So
okay.
I mean, it's dark here anyway. So
all right, so this is our tech tip for the day.
Good lighting.
Throw a computer screen at you.
Around. There you go.
Okay. Well, and this is actually a great segue, by the way. For those of you who are listening to the audio version on the podcast, thank you for listening in. But this is also a Facebook Live feed video. And this goes out to facebook.com/photogsedit, PHOTOGSEDIT. It's Photographers Edit's Facebook page is where we send this live. So I'm sure this conversation, again, is going to be wide ranging today. There's going to be much more show and tell than maybe even average. But Haley was actually just showing us, she turned her screen around to show us how she's got her computer set up so that it's actually lighting her with, as Rich pointed out earlier, this beautiful Rembrandt lighting. So definitely check out the live video if you don't get a chance. Come join us. Don't hesitate to comment if you're watching. Jump in, comment, ask questions, make suggestions, make fun of Rich, whatever you'd like to do.
That's what I'm here for. That's my primary purpose. Right. Right.
I already alluded to this, but just like a 10-second blurb here for those of you who are new to Workflow Wednesday. This is really the second of 3 episodes that we put out on the Bokeh podcast every week. This is centered around workflow, hence the name. All of us are involved in some way in workflow on a day-to-day basis as photography business owners. We may not use that term, but the reality is that is the case. And we want to help you figure out more efficient ways to implement workflow so that you can save time and have a life. Do more than just sit around on a computer all day or on your phone all day. Connect with the people that are important to you. Travel. Ren is like, if you guys aren't following Ren on Instagram, you have to. And it's just Instagram.com/Ren, RYNLOREN. Check out her Instagram feed. The traveling she's done is incredible. But anyway. Oh, it's amazing.
It's entertaining.
Oh yeah. In fact, this is a good segue because we were on your website. We went to your About Me page, and you were standing. It looks like in front of a glacier. Where are you?
Yes. I was at Spencer Glacier right outside of Anchorage, Alaska. So my sister was over there for a little bit, and one of her friends who was like 21 at the time, we hopped in this little tiny bush plane with him, and he flew us all the way over there. We landed on this frozen lake, and then we just walked around this glacier. It was epic. It was amazing.
That is so awesome. We're actually headed to Alaska for the first time this July. And so we may hit you up for some advice about what to do. Yes. We're going to spend a few days in Anchorage and then head on a southbound cruise. And so, yeah, we're really excited about that. So our eyes lit up when we saw that picture of you on your website. I
know. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, we're excited about all things
in July, but because
we are actually going to take a helicopter ride and land on a glacier in July. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And go dog sledding with some Alaskan Huskies.
Oh, yes. That's awesome.
Yeah. Did you get to do the dog sledding, Ren?
No, I did not do dog sledding. I spent most of my time in the air or just traveling around. So
that is awesome. I love that photo.
Rich mentioned Ren's website. It's Loren, just like I spelled a second ago, RYNLOREN, photography.com. So we'll put both that and her Instagram in the show notes too. If you go to BokehPodcast.com, podcast.com, you can see a load of show notes there. Haley, I always say this, but I'm so impressed and I love how Haley puts together the show notes for all the podcast episodes that we do. It's a load of resources, a lot of information. So make sure you check that out. But back to you, Rich. I'll let you kind of carry the introduction of the illustrious Ren Tompkins.
Well, yeah. So this is kind of unusual that we actually get to talk with people we already know. So Ren is definitely a normal, not normal person, a regular photographer who hangs out with us on Sundays. And she is quite normal. So, but
please define regular.
Yeah,
I know, right?
Regular attender of our Thursday day get together. So, I thought this was originally going to be about Instagram stories because this girl is the one that taught me about Instagram. So I thought we were going to rename this to Ren teaches old people how to do the World Wide Web. Yeah.
You're kind of letting me down. You've only posted 2 stories since I taught you how to do it.
3, come on.
Okay, 3.
I'm warming up to them.
I have higher expectations for you.
Oh my goodness!
I talked about this before, but as much as Ren's sense of humor, I love it. Her sarcasm and her wit. Rich, same thing goes for you, man. I think we all want to see stories from you because and we want that sense of humor. That's so much of what makes you you.
That's so true.
Man,
he was being ridiculous this morning, and I literally said to our kids, "I'm like, girls, marry a man who makes you laugh because life can be stressful. It can be overwhelming sometimes. There's a lot of obligations and responsibilities inherent in adulting. And this guy keeps it interesting. And I'm just thankful for that because I'm too serious, I need him.
Yeah. So, Ren, I think one of these days I'm going to show you how boring my life is. You'll be like, and you'll be like, hey. Rich, you need to calm it down. We don't need this is you are.
Meanwhile, boring. Heather's like, your life is not boring.
I'm like, yeah.
I'll be like, oh yeah, here's me from my computer. Again, here's me from my computer at another place. Here's me from my computer at another place.
Yeah.
And here I am about to go to bed. See you later. Yeah. That's my day.
Well, Ren was both an inspiration for Rich and I because neither of us, Rich really hadn't spent any time on stories. I had taken a hiatus, if you will. And a couple of weeks ago, we had conversation at this weekly brunch, the Thursday Photographers Brunch here in Chattanooga. By the way, for any Chattanooga photographers listening in or watching, please come joining us. It's the same place every week, same time, 11 a.m. Come hang out with us. It's a lot of fun. Sometimes it's a smaller group. Sometimes it's a larger group. Usually it's at least Haley, myself, and Ren. Sometimes Rich. Maybe Heather, if we get really lucky. And then there are a sprinkling of others that kind of come and join us occasionally. So it's a lot of fun. But one of the things that I brought this up now probably at least twice, maybe even more on various Bokeh podcast episodes since that little hangout a couple of weeks ago where we were talking about stories, Ren. One of the things that I think we should highlight again was as busy as you are, and people will see this if they start following you on Instagram and watch your stories, you're posting sometimes 10, 15 times a day.
Yes.
And my assumption that day when we were having this conversation was that you're on Instagram constantly in order to make that happen. You've also talked about how most, if not all of your business right now is coming through Instagram as well. Mm-hmm. And so in some ways I could, even if it's taking up a ton of your time, I can see that the investment, that the ROI makes sense. But as much as we talk here on the podcast about getting away from our phones, our computers, and actually living, doing more than just work, it was really fascinating to me to hear when you told me you actually pulled up the stats on your iPhone that showed you're only using Instagram about an average of an hour a day.
Yeah,
and
just an hour.
An hour, and an hour a day is essentially running your business or generating the business that you want or you need, which is so impressive. Can you just comment a little bit on what that looks like for you?
Yeah. So with my Instagram, I really enjoy being on Instagram, first of all. So it was a natural transition for me to spend time building my business on there. I think in last week we were talking about how I look at my Instagram feed, those like 9 posts that are on your, when you first pull it up, as kind of like the front door to your house or the curb appeal to be like, oh, that's cute, or, to attract people. And then your stories are like welcoming you into the living room. I'm like, come on, let's see how we, do things around here.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then, so since I was already spending a lot of my time on Instagram, or I was just already taking videos of things that I wanted to remember or stuff, you just post them on your story. And it takes me, I'd say even out of the hour that I spend a day, I probably only spend maybe 20 minutes of that towards business strictly. So
are those that hour that you spend over the course of the day, is that impromptu and spontaneous, or is that you kind of think about that in advance? How does that work?
Yeah.
It's kind of a mixture of both. So for instance, if you've seen my story today, I was walking out to my car and there was turkeys by my car. I'm like, am I going to get attacked by turkeys? There's just like 2 huge birds. And so that was impromptu. But do you know how many people commented on that and just like send me Instagram messages? They're like, what in the world? So that was funny. And then I do try to be strategic. So right now, it's actually the 3rd week that I've started to do Would I Rather Wednesdays. Instead of asking people, what would you rather do? I turned it around towards me, just so that my audience can get to know me a little bit better. So I think the first week I asked, do you think that I would rather skinny dip or jump in fully clothed? And everyone pretty much voted that I would skinny dip. And I was like, no, I am like a rule follower. So
I got to ask you, are you also on Snapchat? I mean, because like Instagram added that feature to combat because it basically the stories and Snapchat's basically the exact same thing, right?
It's similar, but I think it has a different purpose. I don't do Snapchat anymore. I used to do Snapchat, but it was more of just like a personal experience, like with other people, like close friends, my siblings. And it didn't have the intention of business behind it or inviting people into my life. It was just more of if I wanted to take a picture or a video and send it to someone, but I didn't want it to stay on my phone. You know how like you get tired of like random videos and pictures on your phone that you don't want to keep. But
right.
So I kind of use it as a tool for that versus building a personal brand.
Yeah, I think it also is relevant to who your market is, because
100%.
Most of our market is not going to be on Snapchat, or at least the ones that are using it for entertainment with their friends. They're going to be like high schoolish aged. So I think that has a lot to do with it too.
I would actually be curious to see the numbers, what they are right now too. Comparison, I mean, as far as the way that different segments of the market spend time on the various apps, I don't know if there's accurate data out there. The conversation about our target audience is extremely relevant. I think it's no longer like a one-off conversation here and there about Facebook. We know that people are tending to move away from Facebook at least a bit more. In some ways, and spending a bit more time on Instagram, if no other reason than they enjoy it. And you don't have a lot of for lack of a better explanation, the BS running through your feed. There's just a lot of noise there. And when you get to focus on an image and, if you want to read the text, it's just a very simple experience, which I think is really great in our noisy, kind of complicated world. But Snapchat does seem to be targeted right now more toward the high schoolers, basically junior high school, at least from my little bit of understanding. So I think it makes sense to focus where our market is, I think it also makes sense. Like I know we've talked about Gary Vaynerchuk on the podcast quite a bit. And I'll mention again that, one of the things that has certainly been inspirational for me in listening to, watching his content is the significance of being everywhere. But I also don't, A, care to work 80 hours a week, and B, ultimately in wanting to create a particular lifestyle that doesn't revolve around displaying everything that I do, being on technology nonstop. And so at that point, if that's the reality, if that's our value system, then the question, of course, is what's the 80-20? Where can I spend, the 20% of the time and get 80% of the results? What's the biggest ROI, very simply? And Instagram right now seems to be largely where it's at, not downplaying how Facebook can still play a role. I mean, we're actively using Facebook for both Bokeh Podcast and Photographers Edit. But as far as personal engagement, Instagram seems to be kind of where it's at right now. Would you say that, Ren, or what's your take on it? I'm curious to your perspective.
Yes, especially for my audience, I basically spend no time on Facebook. Facebook is more of where I connect with family of brides, and the older generation, older crowd seems to be more active on Facebook and will follow through with that. But my ideal clients, Rich, you're like, I'm on Facebook.
You're talking about me. Right.
Yeah. So Facebook is still a great tool. Maybe it'll come back around. I have no idea, but Instagram is where it's at right now. So,
well, and as a business owner, I mean, I want to know, where am I going to get the most, like you said, ROI? I mean, how much am I going to, because I don't want to waste a bunch of time, because obviously my time is precious. I got a family, I want, and whatnot. So I don't want to spend, 30 hours, 40 hours. In fact, another photographer in our group, she actually posted like a little job listing of someone she wants to hire to kind of do that for her, throughout the week. I'm like, that's brilliant. I feel like I should do that. I should hire someone who is young.
Like your content creator, just follow you around.
Little personal rich paparazzi.
Exactly. Can you just follow me around, or just text me like, "Hey, what are you doing? Remember Instagram stories. Maybe you want to post on Instagram stories now. Like somebody to remind me about that. Because I never think about it. I never watch Instagram stories, all that kind of stuff. So
just set a repeating reminder that goes off every 3 hours or something, and just post something. Just to get you started. Like it wouldn't.
Oh man.
Well, I really appreciate your perspective, Ren, on this. And I'll close with this, because I thought this was also extremely compelling. My concern, and I think I think I share this perspective with Rich and Heather, just because we're of a similar age range, if you will. But one of the things that took us, I'll speak for myself, that took me off guard initially with Instagram, this is of course years ago, was the simple egocentric behavior associated with it. And so it's all, look at me, and the selfies and trying to look good and this kind of thing. And it was just off-putting to me. And the conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago, Ren, one of the things that you pointed out was that you actually spend time. You're not just kind of randomly posting for the sake of attention. You're posting on there specifically to engage with your clients, but also to share a personal side of you. But the thing that really got to me was to add value. You're actually trying to post content that is actually helpful to people. And that's driven the effort that I've made, while still not as consistent as I'd like it to be so far since those 2 weeks ago. The content that I do post, I want to encourage conversation, but I want to add value in some way. Even if it's a stupid little nerdy tech tip that I picked up or something that I implement in my workflow, if I'm going to spend the time, I want to add value, whatever, 70, 80% of the time. Sure, post a couple of fun things and mix your personality into that. But I love the idea that you're focusing on adding value as well. And I think that's really, really important, especially if we're trying to maximize our ROIs in Instagram.
Yes. I just think a lot of times when I'm posting on Instagram, I have people who I don't know who will message me and be like, thank you for saying that. Like, you have no idea. I was going through this. And then when you said that, it kind of changed my perspective. Or, hey, what's that blah, blah, blah that you were using? Like, I could really use that in my life. And it's just like simple things that I'm not really going out of my way that really impact people and serve them. So it brings me a lot of joy to do it too. Just being able to connect to people on a different level.
Yeah.
So
nice. I actually, I think even about a week ago, I actually added, like on the contact form of my website, I added, how did you find me? And I added Instagram to that list of someone. And I wanted to kind of see like how many people are finding me from Instagram. I just want to know so I can keep track of that. And I got an inquiry just this morning. Someone clicked on Instagram. So I'm like, eesh, I haven't updated Instagram in forever. And the only thing I've done is stories. So maybe, maybe you know what you're doing, Rihanna, I guess. So.
Hey, I don't know anything. I've just tried every day and it's working so far.
Nice.
Well, and I think there's something to be said about the relevancy of being on that platform, understanding that our culture now, that is, they are spending a lot of time there. And I'm thinking too about the ROI, the amount of time. So the average wedding photographer, if they're shooting, let's say 25 weddings a year, having shot weddings for over 10 years myself and been in the industry for even longer now, I can't imagine that there's any real need. If you've got, we're talking about efficient workflow. If you've got an efficient workflow in place, there's really no need to spend any more than maybe 20, 25 hours a week in order to run your business. And that may be more than you even need in a lot of cases. And if an hour a day of that, so what is that, 5 hours a week is spent on Instagram and you can get 50, 60, 70% of your business from it, why not? I mean, it's such easy work. So I think it's an interesting point of conversation. And again, I appreciate you highlighting that for us. And this really could have been our industry snapshot segment, but I am curious, Ren, if there's anything else that comes to mind, any interesting conversations that you're hearing or involved in the industry right now, or some tech news or something that's popped up that's caught your attention?
Well, this week, I feel like we've talked a lot about, just in our like little photography community, about styled shoots and if photographers should pay for us to be involved in a style shoot. Have you heard that buzz going around that topic?
Yes. I saw the drama that happened about that.
Well, that post kind of sparked a lot of conversation. And I was specifically talking to Kristen George about her take on it, because I've participated in really only one styled shoot, but I've got a couple coming up. One where I paid to be a part of it. And she's like, I don't understand why you're paying to be a part of it. And I'm like, well, if you go to styled shoots across America, it's a very popular trend for photographers to actually pay to be a part of a styled shoot. And so we started talking about it. She's like, which I don't want to misspeak for her, but she was saying that she thinks that photographers and all the other vendors should all pitch in, or it should be a collaborative effort and no one should. So it's really kind of because you're giving your photos to the vendors, but so it's been really a hot topic this week.
Well, I'm curious. Go ahead, Heather. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, is the mentality behind a photographer paying, is the mentality behind that because a photographer is one of the few vendors involved in a styled shoot who aren't actually paying out-of-pocket costs to make the styled shoot happen? For example, a caterer and a florist are going to have a cost of goods sold that they're going to be donating to the styled shoot. And whereas with a photographer, you're just talking about a time involvement. Obviously, our time is worth money, but is that the mentality behind why a photographer could be expected to pay? Because styled shoots are typically not something that we do in our business. But the one or two times that we have done it, there's been no pay involvement.
But at the same time, the vendors get a product out of that. Which is my photos, my talent, my, these beautiful photos they can use in their own portfolio. So I mean,
that they're not having to pay for,
exactly. So, I mean,
where did the conversation originally start, or what was the initial, I guess, premise of the conversation when this all kind of blew up? Can you enlighten all of us or bring us up to speed on that?
So in a vendor Facebook group around Chattanooga vendors, I guess it was made light that there was a planned styled shoot where photographers were paying, and the host of the styled shoot, the coordinator of it all,
the venue.
There was just some discrepancies between where the money was going to and who was actually benefiting from the money. So, I'm not I don't know the situation exactly, so I don't want to misspeak on it, but I do know that it sparked this huge conversation among all of us. And Kristen she's never done a styled shoot, paid to be in one or participated in the type that we were talking about. So,
what's the mentality behind those who are saying that people should pay to be involved?
I think it depends on who the coordinator is, but to cover expenses, like to pitch in for florals, or perhaps you couldn't find a dress from someone to use, so you go out and buy the dress, and then all the photographers split the cost of it. Styled shoots could be so many things, because it could be one photographer who is like, kind of leading the coordination of it so that they plan it to match exactly what they're wanting for their portfolio. Or I think the ones with multiple photographers who are actually paying to be a part of it, they're still probably looking for something to match a portfolio, but they're more hands off in the planning of it. They just see like a mood board and then they're like, "Ooh, I want to participate." The ones that I've currently participated in, they're out of the city. So, the one I just did with Ben, Ben Clifford.
Yeah. Benjamin Clifford's been on our podcast before. He's
Yeah. So that one was in Arizona. So he took care of all the planning of it. And, but he also organized where we were staying and dinner, and he did a lot more for that. So, I just think it's an interesting conversation around, and you have, style shoots across America where people are planning and charging photographers. So I think it's just a different mentality.
Well, I would go back to Rich's point, which is very simply, there's a lot of conversations in our culture right now that are sensitive, if you will. And a lot of what drives those conversations are feelings. Feelings aren't always the most objective or logical, and it doesn't take away necessarily the significance of them. But at the end of the day, if we're going to accomplish anything and kind of move forward, if we're going to have progress, there also has to be some logic involved. And at this point, I'm having a hard time. For me, there's a disconnect between the idea that a photographer has to pay while simultaneously providing a final product, not only their time involved in shooting, but a final product which the other vendors didn't have to come out of pocket for. So at that point, is there not a collaborative effort where everybody is adding value of some kind? And why would there be any kind of an uproar demanding people to pay in order to be involved when everybody's adding value to the picture is, I guess, confusing to me. But maybe there's an element or a nuance I'm missing.
I think at least this style shoot that the coordinator was selling tickets to all the vendors, not just the photographers. Like basically, hey, I'm going to do a style shoot, and she started selling tickets before she talked to a particular place to do it. They didn't give them all the information. The venue said, "Yeah, you can do it here," because they've done many but free style shoots, and then this person started selling tickets before like it was even confirmed, a contract was signed, anything, and she's like, "Wait," and the vendor's like, whoa, I thought this was like a regular style shoot that we just all get together, we collaborate, everybody gets and so
if it was one person putting the whole thing together, and they were paying for the flowers, and they were paying for, obviously they're paying with their time, but they're paying for models, and they're paying for clothing, and they're paying for props, and there's one person managing the whole thing, or maybe even a couple of people overseeing the whole thing. I could, again, logically, that would make a little bit more sense, where if one person's out all these expenses, there's some type of contribution monetarily, in addition to whatever value somebody brings to the, but at that point, then you don't need all the other vendors. At that point, it's really just the photographer that benefits. So it'd be the photographer that'd be out of pocket. But that's really not the situation in most of these. You have multiple vendors involved. They're the baker, the florist, the photographer, the location. And if everybody is getting something, everybody's going to get images from that. And in order to get those images, they have to have their product or their location or whatever it is there. I don't know. It's on a logical level. Maybe I'm being too black and white about it, but on a logical level, it just doesn't seem like it should even be a question. And in fact, the question in my mind is, why isn't the photographer's talent and time and final product valued enough that somebody would feel like they need to charge that photographer to be involved.
Unless they're like saying, "Hey, we're going to get 30 photographers out here, and we have a limited amount of spots open, and this is for our beginning photographers who need to pad their portfolio." I mean, like then in that case, I guess sell tickets, so that if it's in demand, if it's an in demand thing and everybody wants in, obviously you can monetize that. So
yeah, Sarah Larray commented on our feed and said,
"Hi, Sarah."
What's up, Sarah?
Hey, Sarah, how's it going?
It's easy. I'll pay $50 so I can just show up instead of trying to coordinate it myself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a lot less money to spend than all your time involved to coordinate one. So that's one benefit to it, I guess.
And that is fair. Again, I think that goes back to the idea where somebody is taking the lead and spending the most time trying to put the whole thing together. If it's, let's just say for simplicity's sake, we have a location, a florist, a baker sounds like such a dated term, but the cake maker and the photographer. What'd you say?
And the candlestick maker.
And the candlestick maker, exactly. Yeah,
and stationery, dress. I mean, there's a lot of things that pop up around styled shoots that.
Sure.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Well, that's fair. Okay, but let's say all of those and potentially others. But those people are sitting down for coffee one day and they're like, "Hey, you know what? Let's put a styled shoot together. We have everybody here. We want to work together. We like each other. We like to hang out. And ultimately, we'd love to have pictures of all of this. Let's put something together that we can all benefit from." The photographer ends up with a portfolio. All the other vendors involved get pictures for their portfolio to use in marketing, to put on their website, to put together albums. I mean, the possibilities are endless with what you can do with those images. If there's a collaborative effort in that sense, again, I'm confused as to why there's a question about people needing to pay or a demand that somebody needs to pay. If, again, somebody is taking lead or a couple of people are taking lead, they're putting all their time and effort, and all you have to do is show up, then that makes a little bit more sense that there would be some money involved. But anyway, I love it. These are the kinds of conversations I hope that we get to have more here on these Workflow Wednesday shows, just because it is interesting to talk about what's going on in the industry. And many times there aren't going to be any black and white answers, and opinions are a lot of fun to throw out there. So I appreciate you kind of sharing your thoughts too, Ren, on that.
Hey Nathan, this is a new business idea for you, man. You can start coordinating style shoots and make a profit. Man.
I think I have my hands full with everything going on as it is, but it's actually really interesting to think about, even like somebody out there who wants to come up with a business, throw together an app that enables photographers to easily throw together, or wedding vendors to easily throw together a styled shoot. That's an interesting idea. Okay.
You're welcome.
Haley, will you kind of introduce what our theme is for this week?
Yeah, so we are talking about client experiences all of January, and Ren and I were actually talking one day at our meetup about how she does her couples sessions and how she goes about making them very personalized and more of a friendship and a relationship than just book me, we shoot, and we're done, and that's it. And I thought that was really, really cool. And when we came up with this topic, I knew that Ren was one I wanted to ask to come on, and she said yes. So I'm really excited for us to dive in today.
Cool. Yeah. So we are going to be talking about a more personalized experience for our couples. I'm going to play devil's advocate because to our earlier conversation, I like to stir the pot a little bit. But it's something that we've heard actually written from a lot of photographers that have come on the podcast. When I talk to them about brand position, I'm like, what sets your business apart? And they're like, well, I have a personal relationship with my clients. And in no way do I mean to minimize the significance of that for any of those brands. But the reality is a brand position is supposed to set us apart. The idea of trying to have a personal relationship with our clients is not unique to many, if not most photographers in 2019. So what I'm really curious to dig into today is how you make it unique for you. And honestly, a lot of this centers around, or at least begins with, something that's on your website. And again, for those listening in, if you haven't checked it out, go to Ren's website. It's Ren Loren Photography, RYNLOREN photography.com. We'll link to it in the show notes. I'm pointing down like people can see the show notes below. But talk to us about the inquiry form that you have there on their website, because this really helps begin the relationship. You're going beyond just asking for a wedding date. You are a wedding photographer, for those of you who haven't caught on to this yet, but you're a wedding photographer. So a date for your couples, their names and I don't know, what are the kind of templated questions that most photographers might ask. You get personal, and that begins this personal relationship with the photographer, or with the client. So talk to us a little bit about what that inquiry form looks like, and how that helps you kind of drive this engagement with your clients.
Yeah. So I kind of have this spot that I call like my ramble on spot. And I just ask them to either tell their love story, how they meet, the proposal, anything that they want to tell me when our first interaction with each other. And so I get really funny things in that spot. Sometimes it's just like straight to the point of like, my husband and I are getting married. We want you to be our photographer. End of story. And then sometimes it's like, I fell in love with him, and he proposed, and like so long and so many details. So I get those two. And I think you're really wanting me to hit on my question about either coffee, gelato, or champs. Is that the one?
Well, so I actually just, as you were talking there, I pulled up the form, and the first part's pretty straightforward. It's first name, last name, email address, phone number, event, wedding date, location, right? So these are the kinds of things that a lot, if not hopefully most photographers, the information that they're collecting.
The necessary information to kind of put the whole picture together. Yeah.
And then what they're actually looking to book with you, the budget, how they heard about you. But then the first question that gets more personal and fun. I appreciate your humor. I appreciate Rich's humor, largely because I can relate very much to what Heather was saying. I just am a relatively uptight human being, and I'm trying to get better at that. But I just appreciate that. I think it's a lot of fun. So the first question you ask is, using gelato as a scale.
Oh, yes.
How set are you on having Rin Loren? So where did you even come up with the idea for that question, and how are people responding to it?
Well, I kind of looked around at some other photographers in the industry that do more adventure-based, elopement, kind of just whimsical, fun style, which have personal brands. And they all kind of had something that people knew about them. Like one girl loves hot sauce, one girl loves macaroni and cheese, kind of just something that people know about you. And I love gelato. So, and then you got kind of like ranking of, okay, 1 scoop, 2 scoops. It kind of just made sense in my head. And when they approach me in the booking process, I know, okay, they're really sold on me. They need a lot more information, or kind of just already I know how to approach them to kind of cultivate a relationship and sell myself to them. So
I'm almost laughing here because I've got that drop down pulled up right now. So that the answers that you give, the first one is, give me the triple scoop with sprinkles on top. And then parentheses, all caps, booking you right now.
Yeah.
And then the next one is 1 scoop, please, in parentheses, 95% sure you want me. And then the third option is, can I have a sample of ? And then in parentheses, still shopping around. So I love that. I'm curious though, like what is the percentage? What's the ratio of those people that are just like, dude, I want to book this girl already, only because this drop down right here is cracking me up.
Yeah. I just added it for this new season. So I haven't had that many people respond to it yet, but most of the time it's somewhere in the middle. Like, the 95% sure, but need, and that usually is all around pricing. So they're like, I really want you, but I need the fine line details of like, can I make this happen? So.
Okay. That makes sense. The next question right underneath that, it says, tell me all your favorite things. And in the box where they're going to type the favorite things, it says, I want to know you. Tell me about yourself, your story. Tell me what you like to do and what you like to eat. If you have a boo thing, tell me about them too. How did you meet? How did he propose? Ramble on about yourselves, because I can't wait to know you and your story. And what we found at Photographers Edit, for example, is when we give people the opportunity to just like talk as much as they want to, they will at times. Yeah. And we get like paragraphs of information. Like what kind of responses are you getting in answer to that question?
I mean, it goes all over. It can be really short. And I think a trend that I'm noticing, if people aren't totally sold on me, or they don't really, maybe they haven't followed me on Instagram that long, they don't say as much in that box as someone who already feels like they know me. And here's their chance to like start the relationship two-way instead of just knowing about me on Instagram. I just get random stuff. I'm trying to think of the most random thing I've gotten.
Well, let's make it like even more tangible and practical for our listeners, though. The information is one thing, right? It's if you collect that, and they don't really actually do anything or act on it, what's the point? I mean, we talk about that. We've talked about that even recently in the podcast, the significance of collection of information. I mean, we're an information-rich culture, but if we're not actually doing something, you're reading books, listening to podcasts, on social media, if we're not actually doing anything about it, then what's the point? So similar idea here. How does the information that you're getting from the clients from that question, how does that translate to the experience that they're creating? And I have to add here too, because maybe this is relevant, right underneath that, you also have, if you could only have one of the following for the rest of your life, which one would you choose? And you put like in stars, gelato all the way for me. And then you give the options, gelato, champagne, and coffee. So I'm sure that probably plays into the conversation, but talk to us about how you make this not practical, but make it more tangible for the client. How does all that information translate to the experience then that you're creating for them?
Yeah. So after they answer that, it gives me a clear picture of just like, okay, I can approach them, my normal, like in your face kind of like, person, or if they're kind of more reserved, I immediately know, okay, like ease in, don't scare them away.
I need
don't
this.
show up like this to them.
I need this question on my website right now. I'm like all in, like, back off, freak. So.
Yeah. So it allows me to really read my potential client and cultivate the experience that's going to make them most comfortable.
Sure.
And then I use that information specifically when I'm in like our one-on-one meeting and just like bringing up things to talk about and to get to know them more. And it really helps them become more comfortable. And then they're also like, a lot of times our meeting is pretty far away from when they inquired. And so they're like, oh my gosh, like, how did you know that? Like they forget what they wrote in the box. And so it kind of puts them at a level of vulnerability and they open up more in our initial meeting, I would say.
Well, they probably feel more significant too. I mean, maybe vulnerable, but like the fact that they shared information that you were actually paying attention to, that's unusual. And we've talked about this in the podcast as well, but like the significance of doing something that it's one thing to say, I like to focus on relationships. It's another thing to actually paying attention in a conversation. And then a week later or 2 weeks later, a month later, come back to a conversation with that same person and bring that thing back up, or give them a gift that is a reflection of that conversation, or ask them about something that they commented on a couple of weeks ago or a month ago because you were actually paying attention. That creates a sense of significance for those people. So I can imagine it feels good. Like if you did that for me, I feel incredible. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it.
Yeah. And then the question where I ask about the champagne, coffee, or gelato, that also kind of helps me curate and cultivate the relationship and how I'm going to give gifts to them. Just because, champagne, I love sending people champagne because it's like festive and you're getting married and congrats, but not everyone drinks. And a lot of times I don't have that information right off the bat. So, based on that question, I can kind of like, okay, I'm going to go this direction. And something I also do is I try and meet all of my clients for one of those three things. Usually we go out for beer, not champagne. But like before our actual session. So we get to talk and meet up and kind of spend some time together before I just put a camera in their face. Because my style of photography is I try and capture you very authentically. And I know a lot of people say that, but it kind of, how I do it is like, I want to capture you exactly how you guys are. Like, I don't want to move his hand because he might hold you that way for the next 45 years. And I want people to look at that picture and be like, wow, they still are like that. Yeah. And a lot of times people are like, oh, what do I do with my hands? And so if we have a conversation before, they know me more than they did. They probably like me a little bit more, hopefully. And then they'll trust me more. And I'm like, listen, you don't have to worry about this. Like, I got your back. And just do this weird thing, which I do very weird things during my photo shoots.
Please, you have to
so I feel like I almost have to.
Let's open this up.
Okay.
Unpack it.
Probably the weirdest prompt I have, which is I asked my couple to Jello, and like this is weird. I don't know how to show you this. So you have your couple.
Okay, so here's for those of you listening to the audio version. This is where you want to be on Facebook Live today, because you're going to want to see this. I'll try to describe as Ren.
Hey, I have Heather here. You can show me. We can be your.
That's awesome. Yeah, do it.
All right, guys. So I'm going to need you guys to stand up and face chest to chest.
Can we do this?
We'll be out of the video.
No, we can do this. Come on.
They're brave. They don't even know what I'm about to ask them.
Unplug the audio so you can still hear her when she's talking to you.
All right, let me move this up here. Okay. All right. I'm about to hit the okay. Oh. All right. Chest to chest. Okay.
For those of you listening, Rich just nailed his head on the light above him.
Yeah. Okay. And then I usually ask my couples to waffle, which I use a lot of food references. I'm realizing this mid podcast, but what you're going to do is you're going to take your fingers and just interlace them, and you're going to just hang them down by your sides.
Okay. All right.
Yes, I think you're doing good. Okay. I can see. And then you're literally just going to go like this, and you're going to pretend you're both Jell-O together.
Okay.
We have the space we need on our live video to Jell-O effectively. I feel like
that was That's the best thing ever.
I cannot imagine what that just looked like.
Yes, and something I want to clarify.
Interesting. So for those listening in, what just happened? We have to describe this because some of you may not have seen the video version. What just happened was that Rich and Heather are facing each other, standing very, very close, and then they both began, based on Brent's recommendations, to move as though what's that move that people do on
the
worm? They were basically doing the worm standing up against each other's bodies.
Vertical worm.
Yeah.
Going on. Not only that, the video, because it's limiting to basically their chest and up, we're not seeing what's going on down below, which makes it even more awkward.
I can't tell you how much that was going through my mind. Okay, first of all,
Heather was more into it than I was. I'm impressed.
Okay.
Let me just do this.
Yeah, she really was.
Well, first of all, this makes me want to do a photo shoot with you because we're goofy, and we one time hired a photographer to photograph us, who we realized after the fact was not the right fit for us because everything he likes to capture is not you,
exactly,
Nathan. Everything he
Awkward.
likes to capture is deep and moody, and we were oops, we're not. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
A great photographer, but just we're goofy anyway. But I have a question for you. Last week on our live video, we were speaking with Renee Bowen, and she was talking about the power of Instagram stories in her business. She's primarily a senior photographer. She photographs high school seniors, and that's her niche. But she was talking about how because she is so involved and engaged in Instagram and on her stories, she actually skips the initial meeting and consultation. And I think part of that is because specifically she does photograph seniors and that's a different generation than what we're talking about right now.
You can't go get a beer with them.
Not advised. Not advised.
Let's go get a beer.
But I was actually asking what your thoughts on that were. Have you considered foregoing that initial consultation, or do you feel like that's critical to your business and that's something that you would never want to skip over because you're working with couples and you feel like that's a really critical time to connect with them?
For me, I think it's really critical because I'm asking you to do kind of crazy stuff like that. And I do want to clarify that I kind of measure my couple's willingness to be involved. And so I'm not going to ask a couple who is very reserved to do that. But so in the initial meeting, I love that time. I get to know them better. I get to know their priorities for their wedding day. I get to know where their heart is at and how I can best serve them by capturing them, by knowing them closer. That also, I really try and meet with the grooms being there also because they're my hardest people to sell. Yeah. They're not all like Rich, come on, let's do this on live. And so I make a fool out of myself at shoots and just in person so that they feel more comfortable. They're like, oh, she's acting ridiculous. If I even put one little step towards it in that direction, I still get what I need and they don't feel uncomfortable. So
Yeah. And so your ideal client is going to be someone, for the most part, who's willing to be silly and to take those kinds of risks that are a bit vulnerable in front of your camera. Do you find that your Instagram stories and putting yourself out there and allowing people to know who you are helps you to hone in on your ideal client and attract the right kind of client to you that is for the most part, willing to be that way in front of your camera?
Yes, so far, so good. And I send out my pricing guide, which is a brochure, and it kind of has like, here, meet me. And then my ideal bride. And I list out like, hey, let's not be afraid to get your dress dirty. Let's not be afraid to, I'm not the photographer for a bride who needs to carry around lipstick all day and reapply. Like, and that's, I make it very clear. And also, they do, if they follow my Instagram stories and they see the behind the scenes, they know that I'm creating more of like memories and more motion based photography than, the static fine art, which I have an appreciation for, but that's just not how I like to shoot.
You're not dark and moody, Ren?
No, although I did post a really dark photo yesterday, so be proud.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
I mean, like Haley is our dark and moody person, as you can see.
Just here.
Well, there's honestly, there's more that I want to dig into here, but I know we also have limited time. We've got about 10 minutes. And as part of this experience that you're creating for your clients, you're doing something that I know you place a lot of importance on, and that is providing a style guide. And this is interesting to me, actually, considering the conversation too that we just had about how kind of light and fun you keep things. You're simultaneously providing that style guide for your client. So I'm curious about a couple of things. One, how did you come up with the style guide? What all is involved in it too? And then 3, again, how does that translate to the actual experience for your clients? So
I'm a firm believer that over communication a lot of times is better than none at all. Well, obviously, but when I was younger, I had a few photo shoots done of me, and the photographers really didn't give me a lot of information. And being on the other side of the camera is really hard sometimes. You're like, okay, what do I wear? What's actually going to look good? You just have so many questions, like, how do I prepare? What does this look like? Especially if you've never had professional photos taken, say, before your engagement photos, especially as a couple. And then, so the style guide is just a huge document. I think it's at 27 pages. I sent it out on a Google Drive link. It's so big, and it has pictures through it for people to get kind of an idea about, things that they could do. But it talks about just location, choosing the right location, and the time frame of when I like to shoot, like what my style being more traditional and light, how the time frame that I work best. It talks about just what looks best on camera in terms of females. It talks about how to prep your man for the session. I also talk about like family portraits, even though I don't shoot a lot of family portraits and that's not where I'm at. I still provide that information because chances are they're going to have a family portrait one day, and just to already serve them with that information.
Well, that's relevant for the family portraits at your wedding too, right?
Yes, kind of. This is more of like a, posing 5. So parents and 3 kids more of where I'm like, okay, moms, like, if we're going to be sitting on the ground at all, you might want to wear a longer dress and not a shorter dress, or just like small things. Oh, one big point I make in my style guide is please no spray tans.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Like I make that clear because a lot of people think that'll be better for photos, but my style of shooting, it's not the greatest. So
Rich, before Ren photographs you and Heather, just remember no spray tan, no lipstick, please.
It kind of looks like we have a spray tan right now.
I know. It looks like I do too. It's light, it's ambient light. It's just crazy.
You mentioned that an element of that style guide is how to prep your man. We're talking about the male species there, and we tend to be a little bit. Well, I'll speak for myself. I'm not necessarily the most. Shall we say, modern style connoisseur, and I keep things pretty simple. So in that context, and for I think a lot of guys who don't really pay a whole lot of attention to what they wear, like what is some of the information that you're sharing in that guide?
Some of the information I'm sharing, probably the main element to that section is put him in layers. So guys just look so good in layers. They, especially like if you're wearing a jacket or a blazer, it just makes you look really square. And so it just portrays a guy so well and then you can also pair it differently, and it just adds an element.
Are you saying that you like that V shape in guys? Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
that fitted
hourglass. We like our
my husband. I'm just kidding.
Nice.
So, and then just talking to them, communicating like, okay, this is what it's going to look like, how important it is for them, like the bride, like, honey, like, this is really important to me. We'll have these photos forever. So, and a lot of times the brides don't always have to convince husbands, or fiancés, but you know how it goes. Like some guys are more reserved about photos than the ladies are. So.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I wonder if maybe we can, just for the sake of context and better understanding, because again, we have such limited time, but can we maybe link to that guide, that style guide in the show notes as well?
I try and keep it exclusive for my clients.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, but wow. I do have to say, I do send out like little tidbits on my email list.
Okay.
So if you are interested, like you can always join my email list.
Perfect. So what we'll do then is we'll link to, and you and Haley can connect. We'll make sure to link to your email list and in the show notes for those listening in to kind of get an idea. Honestly, we could have spent easily probably another hour here getting into more of the details associated with this experience that you're creating for your clients. But I think that we can take a cue, if nothing else here, even at the surface level, that we were able to cover the significance of incorporating humor. And as much as people say be authentic, I think that a lot of us, and I'll again speak for myself here, a lot of us have an apprehension when it comes to actually putting our it's such a cliche phrase, but our true self out there for one fear or another. We don't want to, we're afraid of what people think or what they might say or what they might do in response to that. And that is holding us back a lot of times from an opportunity to be able to connect with people, particularly in the context of photography, that we might have an incredible chemistry with, and as a result, be able to take even better pictures for. And I love that you're doing that. You're letting your personality shine and you're putting it out there. And it's, it not only shows, I mean, certainly in the work that or the things that you're doing on Instagram stories to our earlier conversation, but certainly in that inquiry form as well. So I appreciate you sharing a little bit of what you're doing. And again, for those of you who are curious and want to reach out to Rin, you can find her on Instagram. It's instagram.com/RinLoren. And then rinlorenphotography.com. We'll link to both those in the show notes, as well as the information about your email list. But thank you so much for making time to share with us today and incorporating some humor into the mix as well.
Yeah, thanks for putting up with my crazy self.
It was great, Rin. It was great.
They're used to it. They're used to me. So I mean,
the more the merrier.
I know.
You guys jelloing just made my whole day. Like, that was incredible.
I don't usually go back and watch the videos of our live, in the same way that an actor doesn't watch their work, because it just makes you wince, because seeing yourself and hearing yourself is just an awkward thing. But for this one, Rin, I'm going to have to go see the jelloing.
I don't know. It did record it, or because someone else was talking, it didn't actually go to it, did it?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I guess
I have no idea.
We'll find out somehow. Maybe we can at least get a screen grab somewhere.
That would either be very good that if it didn't, or the saddest thing ever. I don't know.
We may have to recreate it on a Thursday.
I'll do a photo shoot of you guys. So
for those listening and what we're talking.
Clarify about the jello shot. I'm not actually taking pictures of them jelloing. I'm looking for the in-between moments of interaction. Yes. So if you use that prompt, please do not focus on the actual jello. Wait for the second after.
We were with you. We knew where you were going.
I love jello. You had me at jello.
I'm very glad you clarified.
Like you said, it's the in-between moments and the reactions as a result of that prompt, and that, we were.
And it just loosens them up. So yeah.
That's perfect. Well, for those of you who have been listening to the audio version, do check out the video version, because you definitely missed out today. What everybody was just talking about is that depending on whoever is speaking, whoever's making the most noise at the moment, that's where the video automatically goes. So I'm hoping that at some point we captured a little bit of the jello action there. But this has been really fun. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us for Workflow Wednesday. Again, for those of you listening to the audio version, facebook.com/photogsedit, PHOTOGSEDIT. And you can come back and watch the video version. And of course, for those of you watching live or looking at the video, go to Bokeh Podcast, BOKEH podcast.com. Listen to the audio, see the show notes. And then very quickly, Haley, before we sign off, talk to us about what's coming here in the next week or so.
Yeah, so we are finishing up the client experience topic next week. But for February, we are looking for either photographers that want to speak, or if our listeners have a very specific topic, feel free to either comment on the Facebook Live, or you can email me at Hayley, Haylee, at photographersedit.com, and we will work on getting a new topic for February so that it's more of what our listeners want to hear from.
That's awesome. And it's a good reminder too, please, for those of you that listen or watch or both, please always feel free to email Hayley. She just mentioned her email address, myself, Nathan at photographersedit.com. Not only do we like to hear your thoughts, positive or negative, constructive criticism, or just the difference that the podcast is making in your life and your business, but suggestions as far as guests. And you can even volunteer yourself. As you can see, the format is pretty simple. We always end up going to a particular topic. So if you feel like you can share on a topic that is or in a very specific way that is relevant specifically or uniquely to your business, then let us know what that topic is, and we'll see if we can get you worked into the Bokeh Podcast interview schedule. And thanks again to Hayley for all the work that she does in putting these together. We're putting 3 a week out right now, so lots and lots of content going out. For those of you who are new listeners or viewers, make sure you check it out, bokehpodcast.com. Thank you guys very much. Have an absolutely wonderful Wednesday.
So good to talk to you guys.
Hey guys.
Thank you so much for listening to the Bokeh Podcast. Will you let us know what you thought by leaving a review of the podcast in iTunes or the Apple Podcast app? And I'd love to hear from you personally with your thoughts about the podcast and maybe suggestions about future topics and guests for the show. My email is nathan@photographersedit.com. The Bokeh Podcast is brought to you by Photographers Edit, custom image editing for the wedding and portrait photographer. Visit photographersedit.com.